nyaka sani koro gin golo nonro margi mabende ne gitimo mano kotudore koda kaka telo kata jotelo sirikal mar William Ruto osebedo katiyo. Wawinjane gima timore kuro gi sani.
Foreign trips have been from the Prime Cabinet Secretary, Mudavadi, and you people in the media know what he has been going abroad to do, often representing the president when neither the president or the deputy could go. Why it is that the sports cabinet secretary has made so many foreign trips and the information technology secretary Owalo has made foreign trips, you'll have to ask them. Or the next time you're interviewing the president, you can ask why those two in particular seem to be making more foreign trips. How have they benefited Kenyans? And as far as visits to counties, not surprisingly, the leader again is Interior CS Kindiki, because he has been dealing with insecurity issues on the ground in many parts of the country. Almost double the number of visits at the local level than any other CS, which I think is understandable and I would say positive. I don't think you can understand insecurity issues in the country by sitting in an office. You need to do both. Okay, so we've given you the ratings of the president's government and cabinet secretaries. What are these ratings based on? What have been the experiences of Kenyans recently that have influenced the way they answered those questions about rating? And the first question we asked, just to get some background, is where do you get most of your food for your household? And you could see that overall, a majority of Kenyans, 59%, have to buy it in shops. Slightly fewer than half, 46%, in rural areas also get most of their shoes from purchasing. And in urban areas, almost all, 83%, have to buy most of their food. Maybe that figure is not surprising, but I was surprised that even in the rural population, more than 40% get most of their food from dukas or buying it from somebody, rather than just mazao ya mashamba yao. I would have hoped, and I have some time living in rural areas, that more Kenyans in rural areas were getting food locally without having to buy it, which would cushion them somewhat against the cost of living. But when you see that 46% of rural Kenyans are having to buy their food, you can understand, most of their food, you can understand why cost of living with regard to food is really, really pinching. Now, we also found that 13%, small but not insignificant, of people who live in cities are getting most of their food from a shamba, in the middle column on the right. Now, is that because these people live close to where their rural homes are? Is that because the people who live on their shambas at home are producing enough that they can send them food? Because the question was about most. You might have thought, I mean, I can tell you that in the United States, I would be surprised if 2 or 3% of people who live in cities get most of their food from their own shambas in a rural area. Maybe it's between 0 and 1%. So the fact that 13% of urban Kenyans are getting most of their food from a rural shamba, it does show the continuing connection. If we ask the question of people who live in cities, are you getting any food whatsoever? Even if it's just a bag of mahindi once a month, I'm sure that figure would be much higher. But we just wanted to capture the main sort of picture of where people are getting their food from. Then we asked, over the last year, have you and your family had to reduce your expenditure on any items because of the cost of living? And you can see almost all said yes, 87%. Slight variation according to monthly income, but not much. Not much. Who are the 13% who have not had to reduce their expenditure? And why is that? Is that because people who are so poor, they had little money to begin with? Or is it because they're so rich that they've been able to draw on savings? Or maybe sell some animals or land so that they've had, at least for the time being, some extra cash? Nevertheless, when you get 87% who say they've had to reduce their expenditure, you know that almost everybody has been suffering. And then we ask them, what are the two main things of those 87% who've had to reduce expenditure that you've actually reduced your expenditure on? And a clear majority, 84% said food. Again, you can see people who are a bit better off, earning more than 20,000 shillings a month. The figure 79% is a little bit lower for the people in the other two categories. Now, I don't know how much money you people earn every month. I certainly hope it's more than 20,000 shillings. You might ask, why didn't we just give you the figure for people owning or earning over 100,000 or 500,000? And the answer to that is, even in a sample of 3,000, we get so few people who are earning that much money that statistically the data wouldn't have legs to stand on. You need at least 100 or 150 people in a category to present results. I would suggest to Maggie in future, we do some targeted sampling of people who are rich so we can compare them even if they weren't collected in a random sample. We'll start with Peter King's because he's a multimillionaire. And you can see down the line what are the other main categories that people have been reducing their expenditure on. Keeping in mind, people could mention two things. That's why those figures add up to more than 100. Now, if the vast majority
Ramogi Joanga, mano Tomu, mabende en senior researcher, mano kakambi matimu nonro mar TIFA, kanyaka sani koro golo nonro margi kotudore kaka Jatend migepe, kata jotelo mantiere serikal mar William Ruto osebedo katiyo. Kanyaka sani kalure kod nonro makamano, Jatend migao mochung'ne arita e pacho kae, ema otelo kaka Jatend migao matiyo maber e pacho kae kod atamalo 65, kiluwe kanyo machiegni kod jatend jotend migepe Musalia Mudavadi mabende ochunga en jatend migao mochung'ne tudruok kod pinje maoko. Musalia Mudavadi nitiere kanye atamalo 62. Jatend migao mabende TIFA kalure kod nonro mar TIFA oyango ni jatend migao matiyo marach mogika en jatend migao mar teko mano Davis Chirchir manyaka sani kori wacho kanyo ni en the worst performing ka entiere kanyo kod atamalo 19. Jotend migepe mamoko ma kalure kod nonro makamano ma osebedo katiyo maber wantiere kanyo kod jatend migao mar somo Ezekiel Machogu entiere atamalo 58. Jatend migao mar thieth Susan Nakumicha atamalo 57. Wantiere kanyo kod Murkomen atamalo 57. Jatend migao mochung'ne wechego maga tudruok Eliud Owalo nitiere atamalo 56. Aisha Jumwa atamalo 23. Jatend migao mar omenda Njuguna Ndugu nitiere atamalo 24. Nyaka sani chenro makamano pod dhi nyime kendo jafwambo marwa mano Simfros Okinda luono machiegni kaka TIFA golo nonro mar odiochieng' makawuono kotudore kod tij jotend migepe pacho kae kaachiel kod weche mopogore opogore mamulo ngima jo Kenya. Wach makamano nyaka Ramogi Joang pod wamedo luonu machiegni kendo biro bedo kwa kelo ni godo e weche manyien mamoko mag odiochieng' makawuono.